Welcome, everybody, to Quadrant 4 Politics. We're on episode 15, and if you were with us last week, we had our good friend Jack. What was your last name?
Casey.
Jack Casey. He's written a book. He's a libertarian like Riley. He's a Christian like me. And we got to have some fun talks with him. And this week, he's just going to be answering some questions with us. And make sure you like and subscribe. Watch us on YouTube, SoundCloud. We're going to be on Spotify soon. All that fun stuff. All right, people? Are you excited to be back, Jack?
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for having me on.
It sounds like you're annoyed with them. All right, people, you got it.
Also, I'm here with my co-host, Riley.
Oh, yeah, I'm the co-host.
Yeah.
You're driving this band.
I'm a revenging.
The Revengance.
It's like a road
episode.
trip. They take turns at the wheel. And,
Yeah.
And I'm like the kid in the back who's just spouting off. Like,
So
Taxation is theft.
yeah.
Jack does do a lot of spouting off like we all do, but we're going to be focusing on whatever questions are randomly grabbed. As you know, I just randomly grab them from the bag. And, just take my hand wherever
Wait,
the Lord
since you're the
directs
lead
it,
host,
so.
does this mean I get to pull the questions?
Oh, no.
No, okay. Let's see how it is.
We're not going to break tradition. Never once.
All right, fine.
I could hear the, bless your heart in that. Like, I could hear you saying it.
Oh,
I
you
think
sweet thing. You think you have a chance.
my 10 years in Texas taught me, if anything, how well bless your heart is used as a weapon. Oh my gosh. Among other fun phrases.
So before we get to the question, everyone knows these are questions. We printed out the political compass test. I don't even know the brand of it, but if you go on Google and search the political compass
There's
test,
no brand.
it's the
There's only
first
one.
Yeah, I don't know the institution that made it, but we printed that one out, cut it up, put it into a bag, and now Matt is fisting it with his entire hand.
I have to. It's where the Lord takes my hand, okay?
Gross.
Sometimes it's in His timing. We might be here a
It's
while.
the
okay?
invisible hand of the market,
Yeah.
just reaching in there.
And with these, they're not questions; they're statements, which is dumb. But each statement has 4 options, which are strongly disagree, agree, and strongly agree. I'm usually strongly because I'm a big, strong man.
And I'm usually not because
not.
there's gray areas to things. So
Everything's black and white with me.
You would love the part of the Declaration of Independence, which I happen to be looking at recently, just for fun. No,
That's what
where they say something, they're listing grievances, and they say something like for opposing with manly firmness or something in there, and I was like, great word, great phrase.
Seriously.
I oppose that with manly firmness.
Yeah, that's right. Keep women out of here.
not in this chamber. All right.
I oppose that with womanly firmness.
No, we are very pro-woman at this table, which is why we
certainly.
are supported by these 3 that won't be talking today.
Yeah,
Well, there's 3 women in the
the
room. They
invisible
won't talk.
women,
We,
as well as the
promise,
invisible
we
hand.
promise you they're on our panel. But they
I'll
got-
represent the ladies.
They all
with
have
my,
strep throat right now.
I'll represent the ladies with my God as a woman theology mixed in
Oh,
with
Lord,
Christianity.
please.
They're
Okay.
washing dishes.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. Oh God. No, I definitely. I usually am washing dishes in my house. It is no secret my wife wears the pants. That's entirely common knowledge.
All right, what is the first statement of the day?
Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care.
You mind if I read it?
Yeah.
Just to double check. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. So it's pretty much saying that rich people should have better health insurance.
Well, that's the thing is we always come back to this is that it all depends on how these are written.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why we
means by
disagree
that.
with it.
That's why we want to write our own political
We've been
compass
discussing
test.
that.
We have been. So can I just say something here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Um,
All right, dead air on the podcast.
Well, my answer would be somewhere along the lines of agree, because when it says access to health care, that could mean how quickly they can get it, and what quantities they can get it, whether they're going to be sharing a room with a second person. That doesn't mean I believe that poor people shouldn't have access to the same health care, but standards brings up a different thought to my mind. And what a lot of people, bleeding heart people, tend to think or tend to forget with healthcare is that there is still supply, cost, and demand in effect, and it doesn't change with healthcare just because it's a touchy subject. I don't believe anybody should be turned down for life-saving surgery because of money, but the standard of it, money plays a role. That's how it works. So
I would say strongly agree, not because I think that that's morally correct or that's how society should work. I mean, yeah, I obviously believe in a free market society, and I think that healthcare is part of a free market. I don't think that should be government funded because free market would inspire innovation and competition to lower the prices for us and to get better products. But I think the fact of the matter is that if you're very wealthy, you have access to a higher standard of healthcare just because you have the wealth to travel. Like if you're in LA and the best doctor for your specific kind of cancer is in New York, you're going to be able to get there better than someone who's very poor. Or even if you need to travel to a foreign country, let's say you want some weird plastic surgery that's banned in our country because government loves banning things, then you can, if you're a wealthy person, you could travel to a European country where they don't have regulations on that kind of thing, and you could get it over there. So just by definition, being wealthy means that you're going to have access to better health care, whether we're in a socialist society or not, because
exactly. And
like
the question isn't is it fair, the question is should they, and ultimately they will because they have the money. So
what about you, Jake?
Yeah, should's a strong word. Yeah, I think I strongly agree in that it's, depending on how you define it, it's like what people should and shouldn't do is one thing, but from a legal and I think moral standpoint, you can't prevent people from accessing healthcare and trading their money for those services voluntarily with who they will. So
it almost seems like you'd be like bringing down the best healthcare. Like, no, these poor people can't afford that nice healthcare, so no one gets it.
Right, exactly. Exactly. It's like, what are you trying to stop them from having better healthcare? And I think my angle would be, much like other government programs are trying to assist people, I want everyone to do better. Like poor people, middle class, rich people, I want everyone's lives and access to goods and services to always be improving. And I think the only way you get that is to let people trade consensually and get what they want. And you will find, I think you see this in the healthcare industry too. Someone made a great point about this recently. In the less regulated or not covered medical fields, that, like where insurance isn't required to cover for them, their prices come down. I think because you see this pattern of if there's a market for something, someone will find a way to sell to those people. So if people have less money, there will be a market for them to get healthcare and just like any other service, and rather than focusing on the ratio or the gap between who has like the best care, who has like slightly less or whatever, I think the focus should be like, let's just allow the market to improve healthcare for everyone, and why should it matter if the millionaire can get like the best doctor in the city, as long as you don't have a bad doctor or a bad, like that. Well, that should be what we're trying to avoid, is people having bad healthcare.
People don't also, like liberals especially, don't understand or don't think outside the box that the healthcare, like the way healthcare works right now, is not the only way it has to work. Like part of the deregulating healthcare is that it is so hard to become a doctor in our country that no one wants to become a doctor. We're struggling with the amount of doctors that we need in this country. And the fact of the matter is that like there's no reason that a doctor who burns off warts has to go to the same amount of schooling and education, the 12 years of education and then doing the licensing,
all this other stuff.
That a doctor who does like a colonoscopy does. Like when you go to the doctor, you'll pay more for a colonoscopy, but like your health insurance costs the same in that initial, like just to visit the doctor costs the same amount of money. Whereas like half of the healthcare costs could be eliminated if we just allowed them to be over the counter.
Absolutely.
Why can't we do the ward thing at home? Like, there's no reason why we can't do that. It's just
with that
government saying,
I
it's
get what you're
unsafe.
saying.
What?
With that one, you can, but I get what you're
Well,
saying.
you don't get like the doctors have the good shit. You know what I'm
I
saying?
get- oh, they do. Trust
They have
me, I know what you're saying.
the Bruce Banner Kush. You know.
No, I'm with you. I feel like it's a false dichotomy people have between poor versus rich. It's like they believe that because this person has more, it's causing someone else to have less.
Yeah.
And I would, especially this in economics in general, when you really study it and see, it's eye-opening when you realize, oh my gosh, no. The people who are like getting rich and making everyone else richer around them, it's helping everyone. You know, they call it trickle down, but I think in a deeper way, it's respecting people's independent decisions. If you let doctors and companies, medical suppliers, insurance companies make their own choices and organize themselves in their own way, you'll find, just like now, like you're saying, there's doctors and people who want to give the care to people. Some are even willing to do certain things for free or for less if they could, but the way we've finagled government into the process has made it like unbelievably more expensive than it should have ever had to be in the first place. So I think that's why lately, and especially with the libertarian mindset, I have a lot of empathy for a lot of the left-wing grievances.
Of course. I mean, there's
yeah,
no doubt about it that the left is coming from a good place.
Yeah.
They just don't realize that
the
they're
bleeding
not
heart
helping
and the
anyone.
the thing, and that's why I like to see this synergy between the right and the left, where it's like, okay, you're trying to help people, and then you got to figure out what is actually going to help people, what is actually going to make these systems better.
Well, there's this beautiful, beautiful thing that is just the most libertarian thing that exists in our society right now that for some reason people hate on, and that is called GoFundMe. GoFundMe is this most beautiful thing that it's like,
yes,
hey, I need someone to help me pay for this shit. Will you help me? And you hear success stories all the time with GoFundMe of people fucking donating their hard-earned money to help another person out, a fellow human.
No middlemen,
some health insurance.
No law required.
Yeah,
no redistribution.
And people
of wealth,
look at that and they're like,
people's
it's
choices.
ridiculous that our society works this way, that we have to rely on Indiegogo or GoFundMe. And it's like, no, that's fucking genius.
Right, exactly. Imagine if you had all that tax money back in your pocket. What were we saying last episode? Like 30-something% of everyone's money, not just the rich, but poor people too, in some way or another is going to taxes. Mm-hmm. And if you could have that money back in your pocket, first off, that would immediately help poor people, probably even more than it helps rich people. I mean, rich people would love their millions back, I'm sure, but if there are, people who are already living paycheck to paycheck, if they had 30% or even 10% of their income back, oh my God, that's like a raise overnight. You know? And then they could choose to donate to and support causes they care about directly, without all these middlemen, without the bureaucrats, without the the new department of whatever, and it's like you can just go straight to the source, which I think comes back to our previous discussion, the actual calling, or if you will, Christ-like giving and so forth. It's voluntary, it's direct, it's personal. I think pouring money into these giant systems and superstructures and regulatory agencies and rules, it just clutters up the direct action people could and would be taking if we would just let them.
The sad thing about this country is that the healthcare system is 100% fucked up, and 100% of people in this country agree with that. No one likes it. Republicans, Democrats, no one likes the healthcare system in our country.
Right. No one's arguing for the status quo in any regard.
We all just want to change. We don't even care what it is. Just make something that fucking works, since we don't, when we break our leg, we don't have to go bankrupt to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
We just want something that's better. And we have our idea, which is, make it deregulated, make it easier to become a doctor, those kinds of things, make it a more capitalist free market system. But fuck, at this point I'd even take a government run system, just because what we have right now is such a shitty bullshit kind of thing.
All right. Here we go. Perfect. Okay, perfect moment to jump in. So here's why I am sympathetic to the left and furious at the right and Republicans, because I think this is part of the sense of the Tea Party libertarian moment betrayal, the sense that because Republicans have so long defended either the status quo or they use the language and words, and this isn't an attack on you particularly.
I don't care.
It's just I'm sure you've seen this too yourself, but they use the language and words of free markets and capitalism, and they seem to imply that that's the system we're currently in entirely.
Not even a little bit.
Exactly. And this is where I want to reach to left when people say, look, the reason you oppose what they're asking for is because you think what we currently have is full-fledged free market capitalism. We don't.
Yeah.
We have this like Frankenstein hybrid monster of an economy that is half government controlled, half not. It breeds
That is
corruption
so
and
fucking
monopolies.
true. Frankenstein monster.
Exactly. And so at that point you either go towards free market or towards government run. And I think because people think, oh look, free markets failed, you must do something. They don't realize that free markets haven't fully been tried. And you see this in so many areas of life where, and this is what frustrates me about the Republicans is I try to tell them, like, look, you're also proposing for socialist stuff, Social Security, the welfare programs, the current status quo of how our government runs and operates.
Even the Trump supporters,
FDA, all the rest.
a majority of Trump supporters are on, government-funded health insurance.
Exactly.
And that's garbage. I mean, most doctors don't even take that in, and the doctors that do or do a shitty job, and you have to wait a long time.
Yeah,
to
we
get
have
an appointment.
examples of the government stuff, and no one likes it, and that's why I would want to tell the left-wing people, like, look, you think it's socialism that hasn't been tried. This is socialism failing right now. This is why it's bad, because we're kind of like half socialist already in some regard, and you're already seeing the rot begin. You're seeing the walls start to crumble, and then we try to point to stuff, other countries that have failed, and I think they refuse to believe it because they keep hearing from the right, oh, we need this and that, and I'd want them both to realize, okay, you're both big government in many ways, you're both socialistic in many ways, you're both okay with some level of status quo or some more government intervention, and really I think libertarians are the only ones consistently and openly explaining how these markets and systems work, and saying no, we need less because we agree the status quo is not good, and there's a better way to actually solve it than all these other proposals that are,
Before we move on, Matt, I see that you wrote "God is good" on your notes there.
That was like us previously talking.
Oh, really?
It was. I think it might have been from last week's episode. I don't know.
You should get that tattooed on you there.
Well, I did write it.
On your
it's a helpful reminder. It's a good one to have.
Because I could forget and be like, was God good or bad? I don't
You just gotta look in the mirror, man.
Hold on, let me check for the Bible quote. This is good. Okay, hold on.
Face tattoos are trendy right now, man. You could be one of those you could be a Christian mumble rapper.
I don't know about rapping, or I'm not sure what mumble is and what you kids are into these days, but all right. Well,
I've been told I mumble all my life, so I don't know. Would that mean I'd be a good mumble rapper?
Yeah, just keep talking into the mic.
Should I
some beats behind it?
Let's go to a different one and see how you guys can libertarianize this one.
Yes.
It's gonna be like something like, should people eat sweet or salty foods? And you guys will be like, hey, it's libertarian.
Respect their choice. Yeah. Well, and that's
Government is bad, and that's why you should eat sweets.
Whatever the government tells me to do, I'm not doing that.
Have you seen their food pyramid? It's fucked up.
Exactly. That's where you would go. You're like, well, because the food pyramid puts sweets at the top,
it's a food
you're gonna have
pyramid
salty.
scheme.
Yeah. That is true, man. The food
I will
pyramid.
not bow to the pharaoh atop the food pyramid. Well, and that's why I think the left, I sense this, that the right is instinctively pro-authority in many regards, and the left is anti-authoritarian in spirit. I think for a lot of socialists or left-wing people, they think of themselves as the rebels, as they think of capitalism or whatever the status quo they're defining as, the patriarchy or whatever, as the authority, right? And which I would say yes, patriarchy could be authoritarian, but no, in their mind, they're right. They think it's the big bad capitalist authoritarian, which they don't understand that definition is opposites. By definition, capitalism is like they're trying to connect capitalism to slavery, and I'm trying to explain to people like by definition, capitalism is the opposite of slavery. It's literally you keep all the fruits of your labor. Slaves did not keep the fruits of their labor. It's the opposite. But
that's the truth.
But right. So I think the left thinks they're the rebels. They're pushing back against authority in some way. I think they're at heart, that's how they see themselves. Whereas the right, I think, appeals to authority often, whether it's religious authority or some kind of, whether it's being very pro-police, pro-military. There's some sense of duty or some kind of thing there. And so I think, ironically, that's why I want to win more left-wing people to my sort of libertarian anti-authority cause, because I'm trying to show them, look, it's socialism, it's government that is the big, bad, authoritative, patriarchal, if you will,
That's
monster in the
true.
room, like bending the women over and raping them. It's like we're the women, and we are me tooing government, and government is the bad guy in the room and who's bossing people around and being a dick. And so I like people to see that, and then also too, I think realize that they can argue, like we said before, for what people should and shouldn't do. They can then donate and direct fund the things they want to, and they can do it better when government's not taxing them and taking their money
Getting
before
in
they
the
even have a
way.
chance. Yeah.
So
my
we're
hope.
just stereotypical libertarians at this point, Matt.
Yeah.
Matt
Yeah,
tells
I
us
was
not
just
to
like-
libertarian something.
That's like-
and
it's
we
like,
literally
I'm ready for the next
libertarian
question.
fucking nothing.
It's like that libertarian.
Push back if we're wrong. Tell
Government,
us.
blah, blah. It's not that you guys are wrong. It's that you're broken records, but that's all right. Because I'll just say again, God is good.
I'll
all
find
right?
some different
All
words.
right, what is the next fucking statement, man?
Let's see if you guys can get through this one without saying the word libertarian.
Okay,
good luck
challenge
with that,
accepted.
yeah.
Okay.
Is
Yeah,
liberty okay?
Oh, I got it.
That
No.
liberty's fine.
It is,
You can't overuse it though. All right.
Pro-choice.
Here we go. It is a sad
Let me read it.
It's funny because 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. It is a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled branded consumer product.
Oh, because we have 4 bottles
for the listeners,
of water.
we have like 5 bottles of water on the table, and we've been chugging them and pissing everywhere.
Let's see here. I'm going to read it again. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. I strongly disagree with that one, and the reason why is because the water that's in this bottle right here that I've drinking most of is clean.
Yes.
It tastes good. It's clear.
Yes.
There's no lead in this. The lead the water that comes from the government in Flint, Michigan,
Exactly.
that has lead in it,
Exactly.
In Flint, Michigan. Are we in Flint, Michigan?
No, but that's not the
Actually,
Or are we in an area-
North Bend just recently warned people not to drink the water
you
because they were
serious?
worried about E. coli in the
Oh
water.
my
So
God.
We're also
it's
not
other
there.
place.
I
That's true.
have never once, living where I live now,
Yeah.
ever had to worry about the water I drink from the tap.
Well, that's-
so I
Usually,
find
yeah.
your argument to be invalid. However, Riley,
Yeah, but the
I am
people in
also going to
Africa-
strongly disagree.
The people in Africa are so
interesting
thankful
point.
when we bring them these bottles of water that were so pleasantly supplied by the Kirkland Signature Costco brand.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Here's my
make a
thing is
good
that I am not an environmentalist. I believe obviously we should do things to reduce pollution and we should limit waste. At the same time, this is America and we're people of convenience, and bottled water's been around a while now. You guys use the term status quo a lot. A couple episodes ago, Riley and I were talking, and I said sometimes the status quo is what you know, so you stick with it. And I'm not at a point in my life to where I'm like, oh wow, how sad that we have bottled water. It's always been a thing. I don't know when it became a thing, but I guess we could work harder to make sure the animals aren't dying or whatever.
it's just like health insurance. It's just that this water is better because I funded someone to make it, to get this water, put it in a bottle, clean it, make it better. Whereas if health insurance was free, there might be lead in my health insurance. You know what I'm saying? It's things are better when you pay for them. That's just. I mean, if you're going out to get headphones, it's like if you buy the $499 pair of headphones, that's gonna be not as good as the $599 pair of headphones. You know, that one's gonna have surround sound, cushy little earmuffs and shit. The ones that are $499 will break in a week. You know, it's like that's the way everything works, whether it comes from the earth or not.
I don't know. I drink a ton of tap water, and I drink a ton.
Well, I drink a ton of tap water too,
ton
but
of
we still
regular
pay
water.
for that.
So I mean, in a lot of the world, you're probably right, but I just see it as
Sure.
being
As a general rule, we're not afraid to drink our tap water. That's true.
exactly.
I'll say this then on the water, both from a I guess, I don't know, clean water, but also the environmental.
Watch your words.
Yeah.
You guys can say it if you want. That's fine.
That's right.
There's no bet.
The challenge. No, but truly, I think, like we said before, the theme of monopoly versus just free competition, the company that's terrified to go out of business if they mess up and poison their customers is real. That fear is real. And I think for to the environmentalism, again, for appealing to the left-wing listeners,
Lord.
for those who...
Sorry. I
For
love
those-
them.
Oh yes, I want to convert and win them. No, but truly, I think the best way to support the environment is through private means. For every instance people think of in which they think they need government to solve a crisis, I can point to them how government is currently and actively making it harder for private means to solve these problems.
What does that have to do with the water, though?
Just if you're connecting to environmental pollution or plastic in the oceans and all that, there's often a market incentive to respond to things people want, like environmentally safe products.
Absolutely. And
or
water
clean
bottles
water.
have done that. Water bottles have been made out of renewable resources, or they've used less plastic. The caps on these ones specifically are really small for a purpose.
Right.
They make them recyclable and stuff like that.
Are we not just trying to justify, though, that we're...
No, because that's
just that we drink
the market
it. Like,
demanded
we made the cap smaller.
But
and
the
how
market
many-
demanded it because we, as a people, not us specifically, but a lot of people made a ruckus about it, which is like, I like to make fun of the SJWs, but I do appreciate that they'll go out and protest and be like, yo, we want change. I do appreciate that because a lot of times I agree with the change that they want.
Sure,
And
yeah.
So a company started, they were like, hey, what if we try a bottle that uses less plastic, and that one sold well, and the rest of the other companies said, we're going to do the same thing. So,
And I try to warn people too. I'm like, the reason why sometimes the market hasn't solved things faster is because there are current rules, regulations, and agencies in place that currently tie up and restrict new and emerging companies. I mean, especially you even see this with the minimum wage stuff. This is directly connected. People don't think about the fact when they think minimum wage and raising and all that stuff, they're assuming that companies can just afford to do that. Okay, the big ones, maybe the corporations, and that's exactly our point. Who can't afford necessarily to pay these higher minimum wages? Small companies, family-owned, startups, entrepreneurs who are trying to figure stuff out for the first time, who are using volunteer work or interns, or they're just doing it themselves at first because they can't afford to hire anybody, or to pay them at a certain rate. And so I think there are a lot of companies that could have emerged on the market sooner with better products, but can't because the currently entrenched companies that are the status quo, the establishment, if you will, they've either already carved out their special exemptions in the law or through a regulatory agency.
That's crony capitalism. That's what Facebook is trying to do right now. Is the government's like, we need to start regulating Facebook because of this fake news, and Mark Zuckerberg's like, yeah, let me help you regulate, and there will be no other after Facebook. Facebook will be the one and only because the regulations will keep the newcomers from coming up. That is crony capitalism, or as some people say, crapitalism.
Yeah, or corporatism. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's truly what the left really should be fighting, and I think where we can tap into that mindset is look, you want to fight the big bad corporations, distinguish between the good and bad corporations. Understand that a corporation that's using the government to get some kind of getting emphatic is using government favor or even writing the government rules and stuff and lobbying for them is playing unfairly, and it's using your own government and your own sense of safety and rules against you. And I think when you let in any case these other companies emerge. I mean, look at like even hemp, for example, or other things that have been previously banned or restricted, or all kinds of stuff, right? Even drugs.
And like one of my friends on Facebook posted something about hemp straws that are they feel like plastic and they don't wither like those crappy paper straws.
How much
like
sooner could we have
paper
had
straws
that?
Suck. And now it's like now we have this awesome new alternative that's biodegradable,
right?
But it's also not shit like paper,
right? Exactly, and that's why I encourage people. Look, if you want to come up with new technology to save the environment, to fight global warming, or whatever your cause may be, whatever it may be, you should be encouraging companies, allowing them to like innovate and do this stuff, and just make it as easy as possible for them to like make money, find their customers, get their voice out. I don't know why you'd want to slow down that process. And I think this comes with like an asterisk. Like I think with my views, the only time I see government justifying itself in my eyes is when it's dealing with people who are actually stealing, actually directly poisoning or hurting someone, or just dumping stuff into a river that then goes and pollutes other people's property,
that's
or
hurting
stuff, you know?
people and taking away their rights. You know,
so
which
that's
is what
not the non-aggression.
Exactly.
Right.
Whatever.
The government, because it's an agency of force, right? Every law, every single law on the books right now, from the most minute, boring, stupid little rule, you know, whether it's a ban on this or a regulation on that, it's enforced at the point of a gun. It's basically, if you don't do this, you're fined. If you don't pay the fine, you go to jail. If you resist arrest, you will be killed. I mean, there's like this undercurrent of threat behind every single law. And so people, like, I tell them, like, you got to be careful what you put into law. You got to be really careful what you are so determined to make law that you're willing to kill people to make happen.
And then you create
whether
cartels
it's marijuana
that supply it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it comes back to everything else. So it's like, all right, fine. If you can justify in your mind why the government is allowed to, respond to force with force, I think that's easier to justify, you know.
So what we're saying here is if water didn't come in a bottle that was sold with a branded icon on it, then government would put a gun in our face and the cartels would be selling water.
Right.
Well, so I just think there's a demand for it, and for me, because I drink 100 bottles of water a day, I don't find it to be strange or sad. So
you know what
I'm done with that question.
You know, also is true about water is when you travel. I've had this terrible experience myself, but when you travel to a faraway place, the water, even if it's clean, it has different bacteria in it. And if you drink the tap water, like from some place that you've traveled to, you can get fucking diarrhea there. And so I'd rather drink the clean water that comes in a bottle. And I'm thankful that it's sold everywhere.
Yeah, because ultimately respect people's choices, you know? Like, respect people's choices, and I know that there's this idea that, well, that person's choice is negatively harming me because of this or that, but you got to be careful how far you draw that line. Like, if you're saying, okay, it's like, God, people are like so hardcore on smokers and stuff, right? They're like, you puff a thing of smoke outside in the wind, and, you know, it's like, you're like ready to arrest that person because you're like, I got a whiff of that, you know, 40 feet away or something, and or you know, there's a lot of these like indirect accusations of who's harming who. Smokers
are the most discriminated people in our society right now.
Yeah, I think so. I know.
Absolutely.
I know, and the whole vaping thing right now too, where they're trying to all that. But yeah, but point being, it's like and this is why we have courts and innocent until proven guilty and the due process. If you're going to have those structures in place, is because. Yeah, you can't have pre-crimes. You can't be having thought crimes. You can't be having, you know, vague, undefined. We have to do this because you're vaguely kind of sort of harming someone elsewhere in some very indirect way. It's like, okay, but how many other ways can you kind of sort of maybe vaguely harm someone in an indirect way? By saying something mean, by, you know, like there's a lot of, I think it's violence is the key. If people are being violent and threatening, they're stealing, they're pointing a gun in someone's face, they're trying to, you know, start a war, I mean, whatever it is, that's where government as an agency of violence can respond, because it's meeting force with force and reacting to it rather than preemptively kind of, you know, being the initiator of force. And
the funny thing about us is that we can start with something as simple as water, and then it goes to government being fucking violent.
Yes. That's basically what you're saying, right? Ban plastic water bottles. Okay, you're saying that the penalty for water bottles is death. That's basically what's backing up any law you make about it.
I was listening to you and just trying to process through my mind, and I mean, it's kind of a stretch, just that any law equals death.
Well, it's the
I think it is, yeah.
Like declining to follow what the government says if you disagree
Could lead to
with
a
it.
fine, could lead to jail.
Yeah,
well,
and
it's-
if you
it's-
resist,
you know,
get shot. Like,
There's people
a-
who
it's
want
death.
to,
yeah, and
they
but
don't want
that's
to.
a stretch.
Republicans.
Oh, it's
don't
not
wanna-
straight to
making
death.
law.
It's not 0 to death. It's not like pistol drawn the second you drink the water bottle. But
the
it's,
gun is, or
it's
gun.
the ultimate
The
threat.
government is pointing a gun at you, saying you have to pay for other people's abortions, even though you personally disagree with that. And that's
Yeah,
like you personally don't want to pay those taxes, but it's like they're forcing you to do that anyways. So
What's that have to do with what I'm saying?
well, I'm just saying if you disagree with a law, like from a moral standpoint, you disagree from it, you can still get in trouble for that. In death, maybe a little bit extreme, but is
well, and everyone
life
has their
really
line,
in
right?
jail?
Like I'm clearly, if I were like resisting government completely, I would already be in jail or dead by now, because clearly everyone is making some kind of compromise with the current occupation, if you will. It's like you have your line you draw. You're like, at what point would I actually fire back at cops, or at what point would I actually like defend myself in some way that would actually get me arrested or killed, possibly. Everyone has that line they draw where it's the extreme worst case scenario, and they feel like they would. In most cases, we give in, right? Mm-hmm. They ask for the fine, we give them the fine. They tell us we can't do that here in this area. We're like, okay, fine, whatever. Okay, fine, I'll put my pants on or whatever. No, that's not. That's not. No. But yeah, so obviously in practice, people tend to just go along with things, even if they disagree with the laws, because it's very impractical to fight and resist every law you disagree with to that extreme, right? I mean, there's a lot of things not worth dying for. So, but interesting how that's exactly what government's counting on. It's counting on you to value your life more than your own rights and your sense of, and it works. It knows that most of the time people aren't going to fight back because it's just not worth it. And But I mean, believe me, that threat of a cop or a soldier or some kind of gun pointing at you is the underlying premise behind all law and order. And
so we should get rid of guns then, right?
For the government.
No, just-
no guns.
I-
for
I
a
was just
monopoly
kidding.
on guns. Yeah,
I was just kidding. That's a joke.
But no, you make a great logical leap there that people would say, well, then how come people should own guns and stuff? And I think it's the self-defense aspect, right? If you're using your government as basically a giant gun in self-defense, that's, I think, more justifiable on libertarian grounds than in the same way that you could opt to use
you
your
said
own.
the word.
Yeah, I did. Oh, all right. What was the timer on that? Yeah, no, exactly. You, and also too, people can choose not to call the police. They can choose. I think that's important too. Having a system of government or courts or these laws established is one way to deal with things, but you may choose to take it into your own hands. If someone breaks into your house, you may not call the police or wait for them to show up to help you, right? You still want the right to opt out of using the government and actually just solve it yourself, and maybe you pull your own firearm or shoot them and tell them to leave, or whatever. And same with all these other areas where just because the government's doing it doesn't mean you should be stopping other people from opting out of using that government to do stuff. But anyway.
Well, I think we're at 38 minutes now. So is there any just final thoughts to wrap up the last 2 minutes of the show?
Yeah, I have a final thought.
Yeah.
Don't I always tell you not to mention how many minutes we're at?
I don't know how to if I had a little like gadget right here so that you guys could see the time too. I mean, I wouldn't have to tell you, but you wouldn't know otherwise.
I mean, aren't people going to look and see that they're at 38 minutes?
Well, I mean, I edited it down a little bit, so it might be a little bit different time than them, but
Okay.
but-
Nothing, that was mine.
I'm sorry that you hate me so much, man.
I don't hate you.
Well,
That's a good
man, we
question.
got
I think we got a lot of those.
Yeah, I mean, we only got 2 of them, but that's we're saving them for
I
later.
think we tend to hammer our points home.
We could
but maybe
make our
something
own
else,
political
freeform?
compass test and then read them on the air, like answer our own questions on the air, kind of thing. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. I've seen some others too that have that frame things differently. they draw their spectrum instead of just left to right.
This one, I think it
degrees.
doesn't take it. I don't know how old this one is, but I don't think it takes into consideration. Like it says libertarian on the political compass, but I don't think it really takes that into consideration. I think it's mostly like, where are you on the left to right spectrum?
Well,
you know?
there's also a big difference from country to country. Like I saw, it showed the 2020 candidates for both parties, so it had the couple Republicans running against Trump.
Yeah.
Then it had all the Democrats. They're almost all in quadrant 1. They're almost all conservative authoritarian. The only person in quadrant 4 with us is the hippie spiritual lady.
Yeah.
Williamson.
Dark Psychic Force.
Marianne Williamson.
Yeah, sure. And then Bernie Sanders was libertarian left.
Wait, so it shows that one when you do this question when you do this quiz?
Well,
now?
you can look up like the
Where
different
they are.
elections and where they are on
That's
there.
cool.
But anyway, yeah. So it's been good talk.
Yeah, no, you should see how the other breakdowns are for the.
Where's
Political
Trump?
test.
One other.
Is he just at the top in the middle?
I mean, honestly, like they talk about how the U.S. is so much different than the rest of the world, and he's kind of just around the rest of the candidates. Like, like it's really funny how they're all just kind of right in the same area.
I like to see myself as resisting both socialism on the left, authoritarianism on the left, and nationalism, authoritarianism on the right, and two halves of a very similar coin.
Yeah.
Almost
They
as
say
if
it's like a sphere.
one could be a national socialist and be the worst combination of all authority and power. Yeah.
Do you want to do the outro, Matt? You don't want to do the outro. All right. I will do the outro. It feels weird because I didn't do the intro.
Well, first of all,
wrong.
do people use the word outro?
I just
Outro.
did, so I would say that is someone. I'm a people.
Do you want to sign off?
Sign off. All right.
Why don't you sign off, Riley?
Before we go, I wanted to give Jack's book another plug. The Royal
thank you.
Green by Jack Casey on Amazon.
The Royal Green, like the color.
We want to support your creative endeavors because you'll get famous and then you can make us famous.
Yeah, I'll try.
That's what we want. All right,
see.
everyone, thanks for watching and listening to Quadrant 4 Politics. Remember, you can find us on YouTube and SoundCloud. I'm tired, man. You can find us on YouTube and SoundCloud. Hopefully we'll be on Spotify soon. I'm still trying to figure that out. But please leave us a comment either on the YouTube, SoundCloud, or email us directly at quadrant4politics@gmail.com. That's the number 4, not spelled out. And like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. We appreciate people being. Are you gonna tap the mic?
Yeah.
You're gonna destroy their ears if you tap on the mic.
We appreciate people being our listeners.
Yeah, thanks.
And
thanks.
have a good night.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.